Hey everybody, let me start this video by saying I apologize because it is a little lengthy. I know nowadays we have an attention span of about 10 seconds before we're on to the next thing. So, what I'm going to talk about is the National Association of Realtors verdict that you probably saw hit the news Friday, and it was all over the media outlets and internet since. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. Before I get to that though, excuse me, I want to thank all of you that have reached out to me and said, Ariana, we just heard the news. How does this impact your livelihood? Thank you. You know, you start as clients and you become my friends and extended family. And I really appreciate that when you heard this news, you picked up the phone or text and said, Ariana, how is it impacting you? So let's start with the history, because the most important part about this is how it impacts you as the public, whether you're buying or selling. So the verdict came about, or I'm sorry, the history is been in the making for 4 years now. This lawsuit is nothing new to us in the industry. So it really came about from a couple sellers in the Midwest who said, the way everything you've done as agents is unfair. We didn't know we had to pay the buyer's agent. That's wrong. Why are we having to pay the buyer's agent as sellers? You've hurt our pockets. We could have made more. And meanwhile, the lawyers are over here just chomping at the bit because they're the ones benefiting out of this class action lawsuit. The plaintiffs were named as National Association of Realtors, the MLS, the multiple listing service where we input listings, the local and state associations for real estate agents, as well as the national firms or the firms you know, whether it's Keller Williams, whether it's EXP, whether it was Remax, whether it's Anywhere Brands. You know, we were all named in this suit. Well, what to me was so unjust is that the jurors they picked to determine such a huge issue, none of them have been homeowners. That was the criteria. They never owned a home. So you know, if you owned 1 or 10, whatever the process is that you've gone through to get a home or sell a home, it's a daunting journey. So to put people on there that have never done it, you're not going to get a fair verdict. In my opinion, it should have been a bench trial where the judge decided, knowing contract law, whether or not the plaintiffs had a case. So here we are. The people have signed their contracts to list their homes. Just like when you've hired me, it says, okay, if I'm charging X, I'm going to share the amount over to the buyer's agent, whether I was giving 2.5% or 3% of that money. Most of the time it's been 2.5%, I'm giving over to them. So how does that hurt or help you as a seller? I'll talk about that in a minute. But the verdict came out in October. Basically, Remax and the Anywhere brands settled because it's such an erroneous lawsuit. They settled and said, we'll pay you 80-some million. We admit no fault. Let this be done. Keller Williams said, nope, I'm not settling. I'm taking this all the way. They ended up getting a judgment of $170-some billion. So fast forward to Friday, the NAR has said, we're done. We're washing our hands of it. Take $400-some million. We admit no fault. Every policy we have in place protects the public, whether it be buyers or sellers. So let's just end this. Now, the media has taken that and run with it and inaccurately reported that 6% commissions are gone. Those days are behind us. Home prices are now coming down. None of that is true. 6% commissions have never been the standard. It's always been negotiable. It's always been negotiable if you're paying 6% or 5%, 3%, whatever it is normal in that market. Whatever it is, it's all been negotiable. So you didn't even have to give any to the buyer's agent. So that's a misconception they're putting out there. The other part is that the price of homes will come down by this verdict. No, the price of the home has nothing to do with the compensation. What we earn as agents for selling your home does not impact your list price. Let's talk about what impacts your list price. It's the comparables. And this is the same thing the appraisers use. So when the buyer comes along and buys your house, they then have a mortgage most likely, and their mortgage company orders the appraiser. The appraiser comes out, they're looking 3 to 6 months back of recent sales that are similar to your home, whether it's in size, it's going to be square footage. Maybe you've upgraded your roof or your mechanics in your house, your HVAC systems. All that's taken into account. Maybe one house has a deck, another one doesn't. These are all things that an appraiser looks at. But guess what they don't look at? They don't look at the listing agreement. They don't know what you're paying me to list the house. They don't know the amount I'm sharing to the buyer's agent of that. They don't have any knowledge. So how can the list price or the seller sold price be impacted by our fees? Total misinformation that the media is putting out to you. And unfortunately, if you're a buyer and you think, oh, I'll just wait it out, now that this new rule's in place, I'll be able to get a lower price. No, you won't. Because again, the two are separate. So now that we've cleared up that part of it, let's talk about how it impacts you as a buyer. Okay, you're buying a house and the new rules in place. Like I said, up until now, we see what we were making as buyer's agents in the MLS before we get in the car and drive. Now as a buyer, if the sellers are saying, oh, you don't have to pay anything to the buyer's agent, well, guess who's paying it? You are, as the buyer. Guess it's expensive. So let's talk about $500,000 purchase price. If you're doing an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down payment, that's $17,500 you have to have saved to put for your down payment. You're not done. Just like when you buy a shirt at the store, there are taxes. You know, there are other fees that get involved, lender fees, all of that. So in a normal market, maybe your closing costs are about 5-6%. And I say a normal market, I mean lower interest rates. Now that the interest rates are higher, you as a buyer might say, I want to lower it so I can afford a better house or my payment's lower. So you might say to the loan officer, I want to pay a point. How much, 1 point equals 1% of the house you're buying. $500,000 house, that's $5,000 more in your closing fees. Maybe you want to buy it down 2 points. Now we're up to $10,000 more in your closing fees that you wouldn't have in a market that already had low rates. So $17,500 to put down on the house. Your closing cost maybe now with the added points is $35,000. We're up to $59,000 or $52,000. $52,000 is what we're up to that you should have saved and had ready. But wait, the seller is saying I'm not paying your buyer's agent. So can you buy that house? Do you want to go in unrepresented? Do you really want to have the listing agent who has a fiduciary duty to the seller and not you help you buy? That's not fair. You don't know what you're getting yourself into without representation. It's like having the prosecution help you with your defense. So you want your own representation. But now guess what? If the seller isn't paying it on that one house you want to see, you have to decide, will I buy this house or go look at another one? Now the seller's lost you as a potential buyer because they're not paying the fee. But if you have to pay your agent, now that's another 2.5–3% added on top of the $52,000 you already need. We're now into $67,000 that you have to buy a house. All right, so that's how it impacts you as the buyer. And all of this is supposed to take place come July. It's in the courts for final approval and everything, but the amount an agent is paid that is now in the MLS that we see will be removed in its entirety, and you have to negotiate it as a buyer. And with the seller, your agent will help you negotiate it. That's it for the buyers. Sellers, this is how it impacts you. If you don't pay the 2.5%, you now have a pool of buyers who could afford to buy your house looking like this, or not even 2.5, whatever the amount is. Right now, if you list your house, you have all these buyers in the pool who can come look at it because you've offered to help pay their agent. Now let's talk about VA buyers. VA buyers aren't allowed to pay any agent compensation. So in this DMV area, we now go down to a pool of buyers about this much. If you only have this many buyers coming to look, you're going to get less offers. When you have this many people looking, well, we're going to get more offers, and now we can leverage them to get you more for your house. So you think by not paying the buyer's agent that you're going to profit more? You're not. You're going to have longer days on market because you only have this many buyers who can afford to purchase a house right now under the new rules. 301-728-1418. Call me with questions. Thanks.